Tonight I was going to talk about what's happening with the fifth dimension energy and how it's affecting us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and sexually, because it's definitely changing the way we do things or think things. And I was going to address the regular person that may not be familiar with the energy or understand it, but in a practical way, how to prepare for it. And that begins with cleaning up our energy. And the first thing we have to do cleaning up our energy is to be aware that everything begins with a thought.
Well, how about looking at the way that we act or react to whatever's going on in the government or whatever, the people that we think are controlling us? How do we look at that, and how much control do we really have, or how much are we being controlled? That's sometimes people take on the victim role when it wouldn't be necessary if they understood more.
That's a good point.
It is a very good point. I think that, well, you see, when we take on the victim role, we see ourselves as powerless. So if we're talking about the government energy, and I've said it before, that Mr. Trump is in there as a necessary evil, and he most certainly seems to be bringing up everybody's whatevers. I mean, there's all kinds of negative energy flying around because he's stirring everybody up. They're stirring each other up. Eventually, it's going to burn out. We, as the people, have the power to, especially for election days, that we choose who we're going to put back in power. And we also have to be clear on our intentions. If it gets into a huge big competition about who's the bigger bully or who's the bigger person or who's the bigger whatever, there's the whole feminine energy and all this. All the women are standing up and saying they're not taking it anymore, and they're not being silent about the sexual harassment or sexual assaults. The idea that when you think of a bunch of men sitting around making decisions on women's health,
yeah,
that is just so backward, really, because it scares the daylights out of the male energy that women are as powerful as they are. Women are very, very powerful. And this comes down to the whole thing going on about the sexual harassment and about women's bodies and about controlling women's bodies and their health. And it's a battle, you might say, of the sexes in a sense. It's also a reminder of how we use our sexual energy. That's all misuse of sexual energy. It's a misuse of it when it's been abused by men, women to other people, and it's also misused when we sit around and we don't say anything about it. We allow the misuse of it. And it's in the numbers that counts. It's the numbers that makes the difference in terms of making it real. Yes, this really went on. And I just saw on one of the stations, so far all the people that are being accused, they go on denying that never happened. And then there was a consultant to, I know it was CBS or MSNBC, where 3 or 4 women came out and said that he sexually harassed them. And he actually came up and apologized and said that he was taking time off to straighten this out. And he apologized to any of the women that he may have misused. And that's the first time I saw a guy getting up there and actually owning it. And perhaps maybe we'll see more of that, because that was part of the culture, that was allowed in the culture. Nobody did anything to stop it. And now this whole stuff about Weinstein comes out, and there's going to be a lot more that are going to come out. And there are going to be a lot of people, women that have power, that are going to come out and talk about it. And it started on Facebook with Me Too. I think that was the name of it.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of women were disclosing that they were victims of sexual harassment. So that's addressing the sexual abuse. I mean, the sexual abuse, but it's also addressing the misuse of sexual energy. Trying to control somebody else, somebody in power, whatever way, it's all misuse of energy. And that's why we have to clean up our energy, because this fifth dimension energy that's coming in, it most certainly is putting out all the dirty stuff, you might say, all the muck and the mire that we're all part of. So intentions.
I guess I would have a question about the ones that when you're saying they're the only reason they are contrite is because they've been caught.
But they're not. But a lot of them are not being contrite.
And that's right. But I say some of the ones that are, it seems like they're. Oh well, I guess I made a mistake and I really need some help.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do believe that. I do believe that there's a couple of good ones out there that it was allowed when they were parading around, I guess, and nobody said anything about it. Now everyone's talking about it because women are being heard, and I do believe there probably are some that are genuinely sorry for what they did, and we need to hear more from them. Right. Because it was allowed. It was allowed. The culture of the office or wherever it was allowed, and so nobody, oh, he didn't mean that, you know, you're attractive, you're this, you're that, or whatever. And but now women are beginning to speak out. They're no longer stuffing it down. They're no longer taking it, and they realize, yeah, that did really bother me, you know. So it's like, no, they don't have permission to do that. And women need to think that. If women have that in their energy, there's no guy going to come near them because he's going to pick up on the energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Stand in your own power.
Don't you think that there's been a real shift in terms of humanity claiming its right to live in a way that is not oppressed and insulted and molested and just basically downtrodden, and that a lot of this is coming up now because there's been this shift where women and non-whites and a lot of, you know, people who've just had it rough for thousands of years are just drawing a line. Maybe they're bolstered up by these energies, you know, and just saying, this isn't going to be the way anymore. The divine feminine will come back in, whether they would call it that or not. I think they're calling on those energies and just sort of proclaiming their sovereignty. And I think it's an internal shift as much as it is an external.
Absolutely. But what it is too, there's strength in numbers. When one speaks out, it gives the next one courage to speak out. Yeah. And then they all can support each other, and that's the kind of energy you want to go out into the universe, because this is also this is very much human nature, and that's been allowed, and it goes on all over the world. So I don't know when we'll ever get to a place where it won't be there, but we have to start where we are now and not allow it and be able to support that. Even if we think it's not allowed, it still puts that energy out there to hook up with all the other people that think it's not allowed. Yeah. So, everything begins with a thought. Thoughts are very, very powerful. We wouldn't be here without them.
Mm-hmm.
So the more positive we have, and the more boundaries that we have mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically and sexually around ourselves that are positive, all that goes out to the universe, and it creates those healthy boundaries. It joins up with other ones, and it's like this big movement that goes on,
Yes. Exactly.
It's a movement of energy. And it's like it gets a life of its own, and then it becomes worldwide.
Well, that's what I mean. It's sort of like we're all investing in this network of a higher vibration that is proclaiming, you will treat me with respect. And people are not willing to just accept, quote, that's just the way things are, unquote. This is what young girls were told for a very long time. They were just sort of, you don't talk about it, or you shouldn't have been there at the time, or maybe you did something to bring it on. And so women grow up with this feeling that, it didn't happen to anybody but me. There's this conspiracy of silence. Same with young gay men in Hollywood. There's all this exploitation that you're not ever supposed to talk about. So now that we're discussing it, the power of the conspiracy of silence is getting cracked down the middle.
Absolutely.
And, like you're saying, it snowballs. It builds this beautiful movement, not just a social or political movement, but an energetic one. And that spreads throughout the whole world. It's amazing.
Oh, and it works. It works. I mean, it'll work with anything that we choose to do where we want change. I mean, it all comes down to realizing we are all one. And I'm telling you, I know the only thing that works, the only thing that heals is love. We just have to love ourselves enough to love everybody else, or for them to love us. That's what it comes down to. We have to respect ourselves enough not to allow anybody to violate our boundaries. But we have to have our own boundaries there. We have to have our own self-respect. We have to have our own boundaries lined up. We have to take a look at all our bodies of energy and how we treat our bodies of energy.
Yes.
And that would almost make us perfect, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't mean it to be a very heavy-duty thing, because it's not. We still can have a lot of joy, a lot of fun, a lot of caring, and do all of that, but we need to do it unconditionally. We're back to loving unconditionally, because that's a very powerful, powerful vibration. And that's where we came from. That's where we're all trying to fight to get back to.
Don't you feel, though, Amina, one of the biggest things about unconditional love is what you were discussing earlier about allowing other people their path and just detachment, not needing someone to be something for you, And then you feel disappointed if they can't be that for you. And that's a big step forward.
That's detaching with love is one of the most challenging, I think, for anyone to do. It's very, 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 because we're battling with our egos. We're battling with our personality's ego. And our personality creates our reality. If you think about it, your personality creates your reality today. If you don't like your reality today, then you have to go back and take a look at what's the personality know and driven, and how they're creating your reality as you live every day. If you don't know how to change it, don't know why it's not changing or taking a look at, then there's an investment. There's an emotional investment to the payoff.